A pretty good communicator, wouldn't you say?
Thank you.
The senator has agreed to respond to questions. We collected some from the audience, so I've agreed that I'll read them.
I've agreed to listen to questions. The response is an option. Yeah.
If your mother asks you to accept the VP spot, what will you say?
Well, what was that? Did I get heckled at the Ronald Reagan Center? Is there another question there? Or? No, I would just say this. That's a great honor to be thought of in that way. I have, as I joked earlier today, I have no interest in serving as vice president for anyone who could possibly live all 8 years of the presidency. So, all kidding aside, it's a great honor to do it. I really love being. It took us. That was like a delayed reaction. You know. I love being in the United States Senate at this time in our history. I actually believe that we can make a difference from there. I really do. And what happens in politics is the minute you start thinking there's something else out there for you, it starts affecting everything you do. All of a sudden, maybe you're afraid to take a position on a certain issue because it imperils your opportunity to do that something else. So the reality of it is I'm not going to be the vice presidential nominee, but I look forward to working for whoever our nominee is.
Next, a young conservative in the audience who followed you from the start of your 2009 Senate campaign. His question is, how do you think the Republican Party can do better to attract people of his age? This is from John Thompson.
We need to be the party of prosperity and compassion, both at the same time. Everybody especially people of younger generations, they all want prosperity. But they also want to make sure that we live in a society where we don't leave people behind. And you can do both. It's not an either-or choice. The truth is there's only one economic system in the world where that's possible, and that's the free enterprise system. There's only one economic system in the world where people who are employees can become employers, where a worker can become the owner. There's only one economic system in the world where you can start a business out of the spare bedroom of your home. Yes, in violation of the zoning code, but you can do it. And that's the American free enterprise system. That's the American free enterprise system. And that's not just young people, that's all people. That's what people want for their future. Listen, I wish that passing laws and government spending programs created jobs and prosperity, because that's a lot easier to do than asking people to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to work hard and build that business. But that's what it takes, and that's what people are willing to do. The American free enterprise system has eradicated more poverty than all the government programs in the world combined. And we have to convince people of that again, and if we do, that question won't even be an issue before long.
How do we get Hispanics to align their votes to their conservative values?
Well, I would say to you that Americans of Hispanic descent want desperately to give their children the chances they never had. My own personal story, and I think it's typical, is my parents, as I said, had some tough breaks in their life in terms of losing their country, coming here. They were very fortunate that they were able to come here. I don't know when it was. I don't fully know, but I don't know when it was that my dad one day realized, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do the things I dreamt of. But it will become the mission of my life to ensure that my kids will have the chance to do all the things that I could never do. I don't know when that day was, but that day happened. He would never have been able to do that anywhere else in the world. When I come to venues like this and big halls, and this room doesn't have one, but a lot of times I speak at banquets. My dad was a bartender, especially later in his life, he was a banquet bartender. He worked at events like this, and he stood behind those little roll-away bars. You know the one I'm talking about with the wheels on it? Why did he do that? He stood behind a bar like that so that one day his son or his daughter could sit in an audience like this or stand at a place like this. It would be unimaginable for my grandfather 25 years ago to believe that one day I would be speaking in front of Nancy Reagan and an audience of X number of people at the Ronald Reagan Library. But that's what the purpose, that's not what they wanted me to do. They never pushed me to go into politics or do anything else. They just want, but they did inculcate in me something very simple but very profound. You will have a chance to do things that we never had a chance to do because you are an American and you live in America. And that's a powerful thing. Now that is the hope and dream of all Americans. It is especially true in the community made up of Americans of Hispanic descent. And again, the only economic system in the world where that is possible is the free enterprise system. There is a reason why in all these other countries where big government predominates, the same companies, the same families, the same people dominate everything decade after decade. Here, an employee can put their boss out of business if they have a better idea and work harder. The American free enterprise system is the only system in the world where that aspiration that I've outlined to you has any chance of succeeding. We've got to do a better job of communicating that, and if we do, the rest will take care of itself.
They get easier. It's okay. In the upcoming budget battle, what position do you take between the defense hawks for higher military spending and the anti-tax groups?
Well, first of all, on the tax front, look, our tax code is broken. It is a mess. And there are things in that tax code that got there because of good lobbying, not good public policy. So the tax code has to be reformed. It has to be flattened, it has to be lowered, it has to be simplified, it has to be made more fair, and it has to be made towards an eye towards economic growth, job creation. That should be the purpose of everything government does regarding the economy, is economic growth and job creation. And so I believe in tax reform. And I actually think that my opposition to tax increases is not a religious belief or even an ideological one. It's a common sense one. Increasing taxes kills jobs. And I have challenged people, and I have yet to have anyone come to me and show me a tax increase that creates jobs outside the government. So, on the defense side, there has never been an excuse for waste. And if there are wasteful contracting practices in defense, we should weed that out. But the world is as dangerous as it has ever been. If somehow we think that weakening America's national defense is something we can afford to do, we are sadly mistaken. We cannot. And by the way, Western Europe virtually has no defense budget in comparison to what we do. And it hasn't helped them fund the kind of government they've tried to do either. So weakening our national defense is not the way to balance the budget of the United States of America.
Next, what is the best idea to get across to our liberal friends to help them stay away from spending, spending, spending?
Look, I think there are Americans who love their country, who want a nation of prosperity and compassion, who think that government is the only institution in society that can do that. And the truth is that there's no nation on earth that's been able to do that. It's not because they're ill-intentioned and they don't love America, it's because they're wrong. And the proof is on our side. In February of 2009, this government borrowed $800 billion and pumped it into the economy, and unemployment didn't go down, unemployment went up. The measures that they've proposed, the things they've asked for, are not working, and they're not going to work. No matter what they do, the policies that they're trying are not going to work because they never have worked and they will not work now. The only way to empower our people to truly tackle poverty is to grow our economy. And the American free enterprise system is the only way to do that. So I'm not sure we're ever going to convince our liberal friends of that, but I believe we can convince the vast majority of Americans of that.
If you could give the Tea Party one idea or topic for them to focus on, what should it be?
I think they are focused on it, and that's the proper role of government in America. This whole debate, you know, all this screaming and shouting back and forth in Washington, it's not, you know, this debate about the role of government used to be an ideological debate. The left versus the right. Now it's not even a debate. It's a mathematical reality. The federal government spends $300 billion a month. It only takes in $180 billion. That means it must borrow $120 billion a month. Okay, you can't keep doing that much longer. S&P didn't downgrade the United States because congressmen are mean to each other. They downgraded the United States of America because they see all this money that we are borrowing and spending, and they know they can't continue to do it. And I think that's exactly what the Tea Party movement and a growing number of Americans are focused on, is the proper role of government. We are not anarchists. Yes, it's important that government does the things government should be doing. But when government begins to do the things that it should not be doing, when its role grows beyond its proper role, whether you were well-intentioned or not, it does harm. And it is doing harm. The regulations in America are killing jobs. Our lack of energy policy and common sense is killing jobs. Our tax code is killing jobs. So, as maligned as it may be in the mainstream media, the Tea Party movement has and continues to be a collection of everyday Americans from all walks of life who believe that this is the greatest nation in the history of the world, that it can stay that as long as it wants to be, but that that's not where it's headed, and it needs to reverse quickly. That's what the Tea Party movement was really all about, and I think that's what it continues to be about.
This person from the audience says, Honorable Senator Rubio, what do you see as the role of government in developing citizens with the principles of our founders? Our public school system doesn't seem to be doing this today.
Well, developing our citizens is a function of our families and our communities. Our schools and our government should be a tool that our families and our communities can use, not where we send our kids to be raised. And I know that in the real world there are real problems out there. And as I've outlined, there are kids that are struggling to succeed because of aspects of their lives that are not their fault. But that's the reality of it. And by the way, I would say that it's important for us, as we talk about the proper role of government, to remind ourselves of our founding principles. And some of these simple truths that I've outlined, and the one that I really think is powerful and people really need to fully embrace, is one that I've heard from a lot of people, and I think embodies many of the things that President Reagan stood for, and that is our rights don't come from our government. Our rights come from our God. Rights come from God. And government's job is to protect those rights. Those are the founding principles of our nation. Without that principle in place, the American Revolution was just another colonial rebellion. Without those principles in place, that's all the American Revolution was a bunch of people that wanted their own country. What made us different is that we said the reason why we want our own country is because we believe that every human being is born with certain rights. We believe that any government that denies you these rights is an illegitimate government. And we believe that we want a government that will protect these rights. And that's what the principles of our founding were. And the more we remind people of that, I think the better off we're going to be in terms of the public policy that come from it.
This is the last question, and it came from the audience. Where do we send a check to support your presidential run?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.